Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for November 13th. November 13th is the 317th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 48 days remaining until the end of the year. Four dozen days. Today we're going to enjoy a rerun from a previous year. Thank you for your indulgence. Enjoy. And with that, we're going to start in 1775 when the Patriots take Montreal. And that sounds a little bit like a ball game wrap-up, but this was way before we were playing ball, any kind of ball. And it has to do with the Continental Army Brigadier General Richard Montgomery taking Montreal, Canada without opposition. Montgomery's victory owed its success in part to Ethan Allen's disorganized defeat at the hand of British General and Canadian Royal Governor Guy Carleton at Montreal on September 24, 1775. Allen's misguided and undermanned attack on Montreal led to his capture by the British and imprisonment in Pendennis Castle in Cornwall, England. Although a failure in the short term, Allen's attack had long-term benefits for the Patriots. Carleton had focused his attention on suppressing Allen's attack while refusing reinforcements to Fort St. Jean, to which Montgomery's expedition laid siege from August 21st to November 3rd, 1775. Fort St. Jean's commander, Major Charles Preston, surrendered on November 3rd, fearful of the hardship the town's civilians would face during a winter under siege. With the final fortification between Montgomery and Montreal in Patriot hands, Carleton's defenses depleted by the conflict with Allen, Montgomery's forces entered Montreal with ease on November 13th. 1861, General George McClellan snubs President Lincoln. Probably not the smartest thing he could have done. On November 13, 1861, President Abraham Lincoln paid a late-night visit to General George McClellan, who Lincoln had recently named General-in-Chief of the Union Army. The general retired to his chambers before speaking with the president. This was the most famous example of McClellan's cavalier disregard for the president's authority. Lincoln had tapped McClellan to head the Army of the Potomac, the main Union Army of the East, in July of 1861 after the disastrous Union defeat at the First Battle of Bull Run, Virginia. McClellan immediately began to build an effective army and was elevated to General-in-Chief after Winfield Scott resigned that fall. McClellan drew praise for his military initiatives, but quickly developed a reputation for his arrogance and contempt toward the political leaders in Washington, D.C. I guess he forgot who hired him. After being named to the top Army post, McClellan began openly associating with Democratic leaders in Congress and showing his disregard for the Republican administration. To his wife, McClellan wrote that Lincoln was nothing more than a well-meaning baboon and that Secretary of State William Seward was an incompetent little puppy. Anyway, Lincoln made frequent evening visits to McClellan's house to discuss strategy, and on November 13th, Lincoln, Seward, and Presidential Secretary John Hay stopped by to see the general. They're just going to stop by and talk shop, I guess. Well, McClellan was out, so the trio waited for his return. And after an hour, McClellan came in and was told by a porter that his guests were waiting. McClellan headed for his room without a word, and only after Lincoln had waited another half hour was the group informed of McClellan's retirement to bed. Hay felt that the president should have been greatly offended, but Lincoln replied that it was better at this time not to be making points of etiquette and personal dignity. Rather big of him, I think. Lincoln made no more visits to the general's home. 4 months later, in March of 1862, the president removed McClellan as General-in-Chief of the Army. 1911. American baseball player, coach, manager, and scout John Jordan ONeill Jr., better known as Buck ONeill, was born November 13, 1911. 11-13-11. He was the first baseman and manager in the Negro American League, mostly with the Kansas City Monarchs. After his playing days, he worked as a scout and became the first African American coach in Major League Baseball. In his later years, he became a popular and renowned speaker and interview subject, helping to renew the widespread interest in the Negro Leagues, and played a major role in establishing the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri, which is exactly where I first met him in 2000. What a sweet guy, Buck ONeill. I got a hat. I got his autograph. Let's see, that's a There we go. See, that's his autograph there. And see, this isn't one of those one-size-fits-all plastic hats. This is a new hat. It wasn't one of his hats, but he did sign it. We went over to see the Negro Leagues Museum, met Mr. ONeill, and learned that he was having a Legend Series luncheon the next day. We were not in any kind of a hot emergency, so we stayed over and went to lunch with Buck ONeill and Bob Feller and some other guys whose names I'd have to work a little bit to remember. But what a delightful experience. And he signed that hat for us. So, yep, Buck ONeill, born on this day in 1911. He passed away in 2006 at the age of 94. All right, moving on. 1927, the Holland Tunnel opens to traffic as the first Hudson River vehicle tunnel linking New Jersey to New York City. Now, the date on this one surprised me. 1940, Walt Disney's animated musical film Fantasia was first released on this date in 1940. I'd have to say I think it was a bit before its time, Fantasia. I saw it as a young adult for the first time. They re-released it in theaters. What a hoot. Fantasia. 1946, American country singer, songwriter, and guitarist Ray Wiley Hubbard was born on this date in 1946. In 1953, an Indiana Textbook Commission member charged that Robin Hood is communist because he would steal from the rich and give to the poor. I see her point, but she may have been a little unhinged because she also insisted that Quakers played right into the hands of the Soviet communists because of their conscientious objector status in refusing to participate in war. Quakers are extraordinarily peaceful people. I mean, there might be some communist Quakers, but she was kind of spun out on that. 1956, the Supreme Court of the United States declared Alabama laws requiring segregated buses illegal, thus ending the Montgomery bus boycott. 1974, Karen Silkwood dies in a mysterious one-car crash. She died in a car crash south of Crescent, Oklahoma. Crescent's north of Oklahoma City, so between Oklahoma City and Crescent. She had been working as a technician in the plutonium plant operated by Kerr-McGee Corporation, and she had been critical of the plant's health and safety procedures. In September, she had complained to the Atomic Energy Commission about unsafe conditions at the plant. A week before her death, plant monitors had found that she herself was contaminated with radioactivity. And the night she died, she was on her way to a meeting with a union representative and a reporter for the New York Times. She was reported to be carrying a folder full of documents that would prove that the company was acting in a negligent manner as regards worker safety at the plant, but no such folder was found in the wreckage of her car, lending to credence that someone may have forced her off the road to prevent her from telling what she knew. There are many more questions than answers about the Karen Silkwood case. On a personal note, one of my grandmothers worked at that plant for a while. She was a school teacher and she'd take other work in the summertime, so she wasn't there very long. Silkwood's father sued Kerr-McGee and the company eventually settled for $1.3 million minus legal fees, and Kerr-McGee closed that Crescent plant in 1979. In 1979, basketball player Darrell Dawkins breaks his first backboard. When he joined the 76ers in 1975, he became the first NBA player to be drafted right out of high school. He gave himself the nickname Chocolate Thunder and set about making himself the most entertaining player in the league. His slam dunks were enormous crowd pleasers, and he named them all: the in-your-face disgrace, the lookout below, the rim wrecker, the spine chiller supreme, the cover your head, and his favorite, the get out of the weighing, backboard swaying, game delaying, if you ain't grooving, you best get moving dunk. A few weeks later, he did it again, and this time at the Philadelphia Spectrum. After that, NBA Commissioner Larry O'Brien called him up into his office and made him a stern promise. Every time Dawkins broke a backboard, O'Brien said he'd be fined $5,000 and suspended. On the one hand, the spectacular dunks were bringing publicity and attention to the struggling NBA. On the other hand, they caused interminable game delays while janitors swept up the glass. And of course, they were dangerous too. Soon the league installed shatterproof backboards with breakaway rims in every arena. But wait, there's more. He went on to play basketball in Italy, where he shattered several non-Dawkins-proved backboards. What a guy. In 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C. after a march to its site by thousands of Vietnam War veterans. In 1985, the volcano Nevado del Ruiz erupted and melted a glacier, causing a lahar, a volcanic mudslide that buried Armero, Colombia, killed a bunch of people, thousands of people. In 2012, a total solar eclipse occurred in parts of Australia and the South Pacific. In 2016, I feel myself clutching up here. I hope I can get through this one without sobbing. 2016, American singer, songwriter Claude Russell Bridges, better known as Leon Russell, was born in Lawton, Oklahoma in April of 1942. He happens to share a birthday with one of my brothers-in-law. Russell attended Will Rogers High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma, along with Anita Bryant, who was 2 years older than him, and in the same 1959 class as pop musician David Gates. Russell and Gates played and recorded together as the Fencemen. Also attending Will Rogers at that time was a guitarist and singer-songwriter Elvin Bishop. During this time, Russell was already performing at Tulsa nightclubs. He took the name Leon from a friend who lent him a fake ID to get him into clubs that he was legally too young to perform in. Kids, don't try this at home. He was involved with numerous best-selling pop music records during his 60-year career. His genre included pop, country, rock, folk, gospel, bluegrass, rhythm and blues, folk rock, blues rock, surf, standards, and Tulsa sound. His collaborations rank as some of the most successful in music history, and as a touring musician, he performed with hundreds of notable artists. He recorded 33 albums and at least 430 songs. I'm absolutely certain you've heard some of his songs, whether you realize it or not. For example, his A Song for You has been recorded by more than 200 artists, and his This Masquerade by more than 75. I'm very pleased to have been able to go see him live a couple of times. According to his wife, Jan Bridges, Russell died quietly in his sleep at his suburban Nashville home on the morning of November 13, 2016, at the age of 74. He'd had a heart attack the previous July, followed by a coronary bypass surgery, after which he postponed shows while convalescing at home. He had hoped to return to his concert schedule in January of 2017, but sometimes that's the way it happens. He's interred at Memorial Park Cemetery in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so the next time I go through Tulsa, I might have to look him up. Rest in peace, Leon Russell, and thank you for your music. And that's going to wrap it up for us today. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and feel free to share. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. All right, let's try this again. I don't know, and I'm not going to look it up, so we're just going to jump right on over to blah, 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 coffee mug. It's late enough in the day that we're off coffee and on fizzy water. And
hello, your call cannot be taken at the moment, so please leave your message after the tone. Thank you.
They don't want to leave a message. I forgot to turn that mail off. That's just about what I thought. I never know where the pauses are after I've said them. Okay. All those consonants. Okay. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? She's not a man.
Hello, your call cannot be taken at the moment, so please leave your message after the tone.
Sure would be nice if I could ever read one of these in its entirety without having to start anything over. That would be awesome. I might have to take another look at that. I'm going to have to look at that. And this is why I don't do live shows.